Hello and welcome to week 3. Um, just as week 2, we're going to have a couple exercises here. And as sort of mentioned before, sort of working on our technical skills as we work towards hopefully a project here in the near future. So, hopefully you've downloaded the 2 PDFs for the 2 exercises. The first one we're going to work on is called the Simple Properties exercise. And the second one is going to be called Frame by Frame Animation exercise. So you're going to be handing in 2 exercises. I'm not sure. I'm thinking I can get this first one done here in one video. If not, we'll stop and sort of split it up. As the sort of week 3 PDF states, this exercise, Simple Properties exercise in particular, is here to sort of expand upon what we learned in week 2, but also sort of review what we learned hopefully in week 2. I try to sort of build and build and build, so there's going to be quite a few things that you see in week 3 here that you saw last week, but just sort of brushing up on those things. Okay, so let's head into making our Simple Properties exercise. So the first, and this is sort of split up into 3 parts. The first part, making the red square graphic. This should be somewhat of a review for you with the addition of a couple new concepts. So we've opened Flash. We've gone to the screen asking us what kind of file we want to make, and we've hopefully created an ActionScript 3 file here. So that's 1 through 3, pretty straightforward. Now, a new concept, which is going to be layers. If you ever worked with something like Photoshop or Illustrator, you're familiar with this idea of layers. Pretty straightforward in the sense that up here in the timeline, we can have multiple layers. You probably assumed that when you saw layer 1, that we can have multiple layers, and this is going to become very, very handy and necessary as we move forward in terms of animating things in a more complicated fashion. And that's what we're going to do. So step 4, double click on the layer 1 in the timeline and name it red square. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to click on that. That turns sort of a blue shade, and it's just basically asking us, do we want to name this? And we do. So I'm going to call this red square. Okay. I'm going to move this out so we can see that a little bit. So we have red square. And just as sort of what's to come, we're going to have multiple layers on this file. And the idea behind naming this is staying as organized as possible. As you guys sort of move into making more complicated movies here in the projects to come, keeping organized, naming things background, naming things clouds in the sky, whatever they might be, is going to sort of make your time more efficient and much more sort of organized. So just sort of getting in that habit here. So step 5, we're going to go to Insert New Symbol. At the top, or sorry, name this symbol red square. So we're going to have a layer named red square, and our symbol is going to be called red square. Remember, there are 3 different types of graphics, or sorry, 3 different types of symbols. Graphic being one of them, movie clip and button being the other 2. We're going to stick with the graphic. We're going to get into both buttons and movie clips here soon. But we want red square, and that's step 7. Make sure the drop-down menu labeled type is set to graphic. So we're going to hit OK. And remember, just like last week, we've sort of moved into the library. Remember, we have our scene 1 up here, and we also have our red square. We now live in the library. I'm going to actually go over here to my Properties and Library tab and actually sort of double check. There's my red square. And I'm going to now make that red square. Choose the rectangle tool in the toolbox. That's step 8. So I'm going to choose that. Click on the fill color at the bottom of your toolbox and choose a shade of red. That's right here. We can click on that. I'm going to choose a shade of red, and we're going to make sure that also make sure your stroke color is set to none. Remember, that's right here. That sort of red slash through there indicates that no stroke color. Okay. I'm going to click, hold, and draw a square. If you ever want to draw sort of perfect squares or perfect circles, often shift on your keyboard, meaning holding shift down while you do so is going to allow you to do that. You might be able to hear my shift button. I'll let go. You'll see that I can go all wonky. If I hold down shift, that will sort of make that a perfect square. Just as we did last week, I'm going to sort of center this. That's a good habit to get into for later. Okay. So that's simple, making a red square graphic. The only thing new in that sort of first section is that we named that layer over in the scene. Okay. So I'm going to pop back. Here we are at step 11. Click on scene 1 at the left. Okay, so we're pop back to our actual scene. I still have my library open here because I'm about to grab that graphic and put it into my movie. So it says take the graphic from the library called red square and drop it down on the stage in the bottom left. And I want to show you what I mean by this. Okay, so I'm going to grab that and I'm going to put this sort of off to stage left. Okay, this is going to sort of float in and out of the stage. Now we're going to move up to frame 60 in the timeline and control click on that frame. Last week I actually had you guys go to inserting timelines and frame and keyframe. I'm introducing a new concept here just because it's a little quicker. Actually, this changed recently in Flash. It used to be able to click on this frame and you used to be able to get this menu. And that's not the case anymore. However, it's just simply in control click. So I'm going to hold down control on my keyboard and hit that. And what it says is insert frame. Okay. So a little side note, I think, and maybe I'll look it up here, if we have any sort of difference between a PC and a Mac, I'm working on a Mac. I think it's control click on a PC. Those of you who are using PCs out there, try it out, see what we see. If you sort of find out something differently, this is a way for me to introduce. I've set up 2 discussions on D2L. One's called the Student Lounge. That's for sort of fun chit chat amongst you guys, and the other one is called Flash Questions, I believe. Those of you using PC, find out for us. Is it control click? Is it something else? So we have control clicked and inserted a frame. And then it also says choose any frame in between 1 and 60 and control click again. So here we are with that control again. And we're going to create a motion tween. Okay. This should be sort of review for the most part as in relation to what we did last week. The only sort of new thing here is this control click. If you sort of don't like that or like it the old way, remember, we can always insert on the timeline up here, insert timeline frame and keyframe and blank keyframe. A lot of ways to get from point A to point B, and I'm just happen to be showing you 2 of these. Okay, so here we are in step 19. Click directly on frame 60. Okay, and with the black selection tool, the black arrow, grab the red square, and I mean on the stage here, and move it up top right. Okay. Again, review here, we're creating a motion tween. We can grab our playhead and we can sort of see that that's moving across. Okay. Now, the thing that we're going to do different here is introduce what's called a property. Okay. So here we are at step 21, and it says click on any frame between 1 and 60. So I'm going to do that. And then it says choose your properties tab, which may be connected to your library if you're in the sort of classic workspace like I am. Here's our classic. Your library and your properties tab should be the 2 sort of tabs over here. We can toggle back and forth between those 2. They might be some of the most commonly used tabs you use, so it's convenient that they're over there. So I'm going to click on my properties tab. And I need to be clicked, and we need to sort of make sure, it says click on any frame between 1 and 60. We're basically clicking on the tween. And when we are clicking on the tween, we see that over here in the properties, it says motion tween. So we sort of have the whole tween selected. Remember, the idea of the tween was the in-between frames, in between these 2 keyframes, or things that sort of, as I described, sort of this is so. So at frame 1, we want it the red square bottom right, and up here in frame 60, we want it up top right. Sorry, I said bottom left, top right. So I'm going to click on the tween. And in your properties tab, you're going to choose rotation 3 times. We're just changing a simple property. So I click on this rotate here, and I can just type in 3. Okay. Now, as we now grab our playhead, you will see that our graphic rotates 3 times. Okay. This is a very, very simple adjustment to a tween and its properties. You'll probably sort of peek down here and see all these other things. We see direction in which it can rotate. We can see orientate to path. You can see something called ease, which we're going to work with later. These are all sort of controls or adjustments we can make to this thing called properties that could come in handy later. Okay. Now, I'm not going to show you all of this. I'm going to sort of stop the video and work ahead like a good cooking show would do. Your steps 24 through 32 are basically creating two more graphics. One's going to be called purple square and one's going to be called green square. And you're going to make these things sort of do basically what the red square did on different layers. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to come back with the sort of slightly or almost finished version of this, and we'll sort of review where we're at. Okay, back after a little work here. A couple things to notice and just sort of reviewing. We'll take a look over here. I started with my red square. That was the first 10 minutes or so of the video. I have added purple square and green square as the handout states, and I've created different layers for each one of these. I have in my library three symbols, okay, three graphics. I have a green square, I have a purple square, and I have a red square. Over on my timeline and in my scene, I have a red square layer, I have a purple square layer, and I have a green square layer. One little sort of side note, and don't get confused by these little color indicators here. They are just basically little labels that if you wanted to sort of remember a layer by the color, people sometimes sort of prefer to do that. This is something you can sort of click. It's called the layer property, so don't necessarily worry about that in relation to your movie. Okay, it's just a label. It's a label, so it's very, very simple. So here we see our three different layers, basically tweening across the stage and rotating each 3 times. Okay. A couple things to note. First of all, when you make your new layer, say when you first make your purple layer, and I'll just quickly actually make a new layer here, and I want to show you something that happens. And this one's just called layer 4. When I make that new layer, it actually sort of extends the layers frames out to sort of the furthest frame that any other layer contains. So the only thing you're sort of skipping on these next few steps is going up to frame 60 and inserting a frame. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can go straight to clicking, or sorry, control clicking, creating the motion tween, and then going to frame 60 and moving that thing. Okay. If you ever have a layer, another thing to notice, if you ever have a layer you don't want anymore, or you messed it up, you just click on that layer and you have a little trash can here, and we can sort of throw that thing away. Okay. So at this point, hopefully we just need to file save as, which I've already done. I'm not going to sort of review that, and voila, we can sort of control, test in movie, and sort of watch this thing animate. Last thing to note, as we're sort of coming up on the end of the video here, is you'll notice that these things sort of have a hierarchy and basically have layers. The green square, as you see rotating, is on top of the purple square, and it's sort of hard to tell there, on top of the purple square, and the purple square is on top of the red square. Okay, that is indicative of how these things sort of are layered on your timeline. I will sort of quickly prove that by taking my green square and putting it underneath all those other ones. I'm going to save this. Remember, green square was on top, and we're going to now test the movie. Green square now goes to the back. Okay, so I introduce layers so that we know that they are in fact layers. Some things can go on top of each other, etc., etc. Okay. Later we're going to get into some things called guides and guide layers and things that create more complicated relationships between these layers. Okay. So it looks like we got simple properties exercise done just under the wire here. I believe the time limit is 15 minutes. Good luck with that. Email me with any questions.